What would you do if your faith could cost you your life? If prayer itself were outlawed, would you continue knowing that death waited on the other side of obedience? The story of Daniel in the lion's den begins with that very question. It is more than an ancient tale. It is a test that still challenges every believer. By the time of this story, Daniel was no longer a young captive. He had been taken from Jerusalem as a teenager, served under Babylonian kings, and now, in the reign of Darius the Mede, he was an old man, wise, steady, and deeply respected. His life was proof that faithfulness can outlast empires. Babylon had fallen, Persia had risen, but Daniel remained, still serving with excellence and integrity. Darius reorganized the empire by appointing 120 satraps, with 3 administrators above them. Daniel was one of the 3, and soon distinguished himself above the others. The king recognized his exceptional qualities and planned to place him over the whole kingdom. This decision, however, ignited jealousy among the other officials. They could not bear the thought of a Jewish exile ruling over them. Envy twisted into hatred, and hatred soon formed a plot. They searched for grounds to accuse Daniel in matters of government. They watched his work, checked his records, looked for bribes or errors. But Daniel was faithful, neither corrupt nor negligent. Frustrated, they admitted to one another, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man unless it has something to do with the law of his God." So they crafted a deadly scheme. They knew Daniel prayed 3 times a day, facing Jerusalem, giving thanks to God. If they could make prayer itself illegal, they would trap him. The officials approached King Darius with flattery. "O King Darius, live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue a decree and enforce it, that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den." Their words stroked the king's pride. For 30 days, he alone would be the object of worship, a living symbol of loyalty. Without realizing the trap, Darius agreed. The decree was written and sealed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which could not be revoked. The officials smiled, for they knew exactly what Daniel would do. When Daniel learned of the decree, he faced a choice. He could pray in secret with windows shut, hiding his devotion. He could delay prayer for 30 days, avoiding danger. But Daniel chose faithfulness over compromise. He went to his upstairs room, where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times that day he knelt, prayed, and gave thanks to God, just as he had always done. His devotion was not altered by fear. The officials, eager to catch him, went as a group and found him praying, asking God for help. They hurried to the king, feigning loyalty. "Did you not publish a decree, O king, that during the next 30 days anyone who prays to any god or human being except you shall be thrown into the lion's den?" The king confirmed, "The decree stands, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then came the accusation. "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When Darius heard this, he was distressed. He valued Daniel and realized too late that he had been trapped by his own officials. All day he tried to find a way to rescue him, but the law was unchangeable. The conspirators pressed their case, reminding him that no decree of the king could be revoked. As the sun sank toward evening, the king's heart grew heavy. He had no choice. The law demanded Daniel's execution. Soldiers were summoned. The officials smirked in triumph, and the faithful old prophet was led toward the pit where lions waited. The stage was set for one of the most dramatic nights in history. A man condemned for prayer, a king powerless to save, hungry lions behind a sealed stone. Could faith truly survive the night? The decree was final. King Darius had tried until sunset to save Daniel, but the law of the Medes and Persians was unchangeable. At last, with a heavy heart, he gave the order. Soldiers came and took hold of Daniel, leading him toward the lion's den. The city buzzed with whispers. Some followed out of curiosity, some out of cruelty, while others looked on in sorrow. The conspirators watched closely, their faces filled with triumph, convinced that the faithful old prophet would never emerge alive. The lion's den was a dreaded place, a pit carved into the ground or cut into rock, designed to hold the fiercest of beasts. From within came the deep rumble of growls, a sound that could chill even the bravest heart. As Daniel was brought near, King Darius stepped forward. His face was pale with grief, his voice trembling. May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." These were not empty words, but a desperate plea. Daniel was lowered down. The stone rolled over the opening, and the seal set with the king's signet and those of his nobles. Once sealed, no one could interfere. Daniel's fate appeared sealed as well. That night, two scenes unfolded. In the palace, King Darius returned to his chamber in torment. He refused food, music, and sleep. Surrounded by luxury yet unable to rest, he paced and mourned, powerless to undo what his pride and foolishness had allowed. The most powerful man in the empire was a prisoner of his own law, trapped in regret. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the den, Daniel stood surrounded by lions. Their eyes gleamed. Their breaths filled the air with the scent of danger, their massive forms shifting in the gloom. Any moment could have been his last. Yet he was calm, for he was not alone. Scripture tells us that God sent his angel to shut the mouths of the lions. Imagine the sight. Lions that had crushed bones in moments now subdued, their teeth stilled, their roars silenced. The predators lay down as if tamed by unseen hands. Daniel's heart swelled with quiet confidence. He prayed not with desperation but with trust, thanking the God who had carried him from Jerusalem to Babylon. Through kings and kingdoms, through trials and dangers, the same God was with him now in the pit of death. The hours passed slowly. Above ground, Darius tossed in sleepless agony. Below ground, Daniel knelt in peace among beasts turned silent by God's command. It was a night of contrasts. One man surrounded by wealth but racked with guilt. Another surrounded by lions yet filled with serenity. The difference was not circumstance but trust in the living God. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the king hurried to the den. His sandals slapped the stone floors as he ran, his officials trailing behind. When he reached the sealed pit, he called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" The words echoed into the silence. For a moment, no answer. Then, from the darkness, a steady voice rose. "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not harmed me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I done any wrong before you, O king." Relief washed over Darius like a flood. At once he ordered the stone rolled away. Ropes were lowered, and Daniel was lifted up. The crowd gasped, his skin unbroken, his clothes intact, not a scratch upon him. The miracle was undeniable. Daniel's deliverance was not by chance, not by luck, but by the hand of God. Faith had triumphed where fear had expected death. But justice was not yet complete. The king commanded that the men who had accused Daniel, along with their families, be thrown into the lion's den. As they were cast down, the lions leapt with ferocity. Before they even touched the floor, the beasts overpowered them, crushing bone and silencing cries. The truth was clear. The lions had been hungry all along. What spared Daniel was not the weakness of predators, but the strength of his protector. The empire trembled at the news. Whispers filled the streets, spreading from soldier to merchant, from servant to noble. The God of Daniel delivers. The officials' scheme had turned to their own destruction, but the faith of one exile had turned the empire's eyes toward heaven. Darius, overwhelmed by what he had seen, prepared a proclamation that would echo across his dominion, giving glory to the God of Daniel. The pit meant for Daniel became the stage for God's power. What should have been the end of his life became the beginning of a testimony for nations. The den of lions was no longer a place of fear, but of faith. And the story pressed forward, its impact spreading far beyond that single night, setting the stage for the legacy that would outlive kings and kingdoms. The roar of lions had faded into silence, and the news of Daniel's deliverance spread like wildfire through the empire. What began as a night of fear became the talk of every household, every marketplace, and every palace corridor. Merchants repeated it in whispers, servants carried it in excitement, soldiers recounted it with awe. The God of Daniel had shut the mouths of lions. For King Darius, the event was life-changing. Just a day earlier, he had been deceived by flattering officials and trapped by his own decree. Now he had witnessed a power beyond kings and laws. Overwhelmed, he prepared a proclamation that would echo across his dominion. His words rang with conviction. He is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. These were not empty lines. For a pagan ruler to exalt the God of Israel was extraordinary. Darius's declaration turned the private faith of one exile into a public testimony for nations. The empire had seen idols carved of stone and wood, worshipped with rituals but silent in crisis. Now they heard of a God who acted, who delivered, who revealed himself through power and mercy. Daniel, though vindicated, did not seek revenge or glory. His survival confirmed a lifetime of integrity. He had been taken captive as a youth, served under Babylonian kings, and now, even under Persian rule, remained unshaken in his devotion. His daily habit of kneeling 3 times to pray had seemed ordinary, but it built the foundation for extraordinary courage. When the den tested him, faith held firm. His consistency was as much a miracle as the angel that shut the lions' mouths. The downfall of Daniel's enemies served as a warning. Those who schemed against the innocent fell into their own trap. The conspirators who sought his destruction perished in the very pit they prepared. Their fate reminded all who heard. Envy consumes, pride destroys, but faithfulness endures. Leaders throughout the empire learned that integrity cannot be undermined forever. Sooner or later, truth prevails. For the Jewish exiles scattered across foreign lands, Daniel's deliverance reignited hope. Many of them longed for Jerusalem, mourning the loss of temple and homeland. But this story declared that the Lord was not bound to geography. He was as present in Persia as he had been in Judah. If he could protect his servant in a den of lions, he could preserve his people in exile. Daniel's victory became theirs, a reminder that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob still reigned, even in foreign courts. Generations carried the memory forward. Children heard it as a tale of bravery, marveling at the man who slept among lions. Prophets and teachers held it as proof that God vindicates the faithful. Centuries later, when early Christians faced their own arenas filled with beasts, they remembered Daniel. His night in the den became a symbol of faith stronger than fear, of God's presence in the darkest places. His story gave courage to martyrs who sang hymns as they faced death, knowing that even if lions devoured their bodies, their souls were safe with the living God. Yet Daniel's greatest legacy was not the miracle, but the life behind it. He was not delivered because he bargained with God or shifted his convictions to gain safety. He was delivered because he had lived faithfully long before crisis came. Miracles can capture attention for a moment, but integrity shapes history. The courage to face lions was forged in the quiet discipline of daily prayer. His window toward Jerusalem had been more than habit. It had been a declaration of trust that reached heaven. The lioness den became more than a place of danger. It became a pulpit for God's glory. Through Daniel, nations saw a glimpse of the eternal King whose kingdom will not pass away. Earthly empires rose and fell, but the testimony of one man's faithfulness continued to shine. His story became a torch carried through centuries, lighting the path for those who would also face trials. And yet Daniel's story does not remain locked in the past. Its message pressed beyond the courts of Persia, beyond the exiles of Judah, into every generation that wonders. Will faith hold when tested? Can devotion endure in hostile times? The answer was written in the den, but its meaning stretches further. The legacy of Daniel was not only for his day. It is a call for ours. Daniel's story did not end when he stepped out of the lion's den. His life went on, his influence deepened, and his faith became a testimony carried through centuries. Yet the greater question for us today is not only what happened to him, but what his story means for our lives now. Faith that survives the night is not just an ancient miracle. It is a guide for every believer. Daniel was condemned not for rebellion or violence, but for prayer. He risked his life simply by kneeling before God. His choice shows that real faith is not private convenience, but public loyalty. Every generation faces its own lions. The pressure to compromise, the temptation to stay silent, the ridicule of standing apart. Daniel's courage challenges us to ask, when obedience to God costs us, will we still choose faith? Integrity is another part of his legacy. His enemies searched for corruption but found none. Daniel's strength was not in wealth or influence, but in a character built day by day. He was faithful in ordinary moments, long before he was faithful in the den. In a world where trust is fragile and reputation easily broken, his life reminds us that courage in crisis grows out of small daily decisions. What we practice in private shapes how we stand in public. His story also shows that trials can become testimonies. The night in the lion's den was meant to silence Daniel, but it amplified his voice across the empire. King Darius himself proclaimed that Daniel's God rescues and saves. In the same way, the struggles we face may one day become encouragement for others. Pain that feels pointless now may shine tomorrow as proof of God's faithfulness. Our endurance in difficulty can light the path for those who come after us. Daniel's deliverance also foreshadowed Christ. He was lowered into a pit, sealed with a stone, yet raised to life again. Centuries later, Jesus was placed in a tomb, also sealed with a stone, but he rose victorious, not only surviving death but conquering it forever. Daniel points us to the greater deliverer who rescues us not just from earthly lions but from sin and death. The den reminds us that ultimate salvation is not escape from hardship, but eternal life in Christ. For us today, Daniel's story is both comfort and challenge. It comforts us by showing that God is with us in every den, whether that means fear, grief, rejection, or real persecution. The same God who sent his angel then still walks with his people now. But it also challenges us to live boldly. Will we hide our faith to avoid risk? Or will we trust that obedience, even in danger, honors the God who reigns? Daniel's example invites us to pray faithfully, stand firmly, and trust completely. History proves the story's power. Early Christians facing Roman arenas remembered Daniel and found courage to sing as they faced beasts. Reformers clung to his example when standing before kings who threatened their lives. Missionaries drew strength from him as they carried the gospel into hostile lands. Ordinary believers through the ages have found hope in his story when mocked, isolated, or pressured to deny their convictions. His testimony continues to inspire because it points beyond him to the living God who rescues. And so the central question returns. Can faith survive the night? Daniel's story answers yes, not because of human strength but because of God's faithfulness. The God who shut the lion's mouth still reigns today. He does not promise us an easy path, but he promises his presence, and that is enough. Even in our darkest nights, his light shines. As we close, let Daniel's story call us to action. Empires may rise and fall, lions may roar, but God's kingdom endures forever. Faith that kneels before him will stand before any trial. Faith that trusts his power will outlive every empire and every scheme. His story is not locked in the past, it is a living call for today. What lions stand before you? What den threatens your peace? Remember Daniel, and remember the God who delivered him. If this story has encouraged you, I invite you to reflect on your own journey. Share your thoughts in the comments, I would love to hear them. And if you found meaning here, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more Bible stories each week. Together, let us continue to testify that faith can indeed survive the night.